Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're tackling biology. But look, we're not just going to rattle off a dusty list of facts for you to memorize. No way. We're looking at this as a live, dynamic investigation into literally the greatest mystery on Earth, life itself.
Let's kick things off with a quick thought experiment. If you were looking at Earth from way out in space, would you even know it harbors life? Think about it. From a distance, our planet gives away almost zero clues about the insane diversity of life down here. It just looks completely still, a giant blue marble. But zoom in, and it is absolutely teeming with living things, a wild diversity that actually kicked off with tiny microorganisms billions of years ago in the primordial oceans, way before plants or animals even showed up. So how do we even begin to wrap our heads around all of this?
Well, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the science of biology, then move into thinking like a scientist, followed by asking what exactly is life. Then we'll map out the blueprint of organization, and finally wrap up with the tree of life.
All right, kicking off with Section 1, the science of biology. So when we talk about scientific inquiry, there are really two main flavors. First, you've got basic science. This is essentially pure curiosity, knowledge just for the sake of knowledge. Then you've got applied science, which is all about solving real-world, tangible problems. People love to argue about which one is more important, but the truth is, they totally depend on each other. Take Alexander Fleming, right? The guy is doing basic research, totally by the book, but he accidentally leaves a petri dish open. Next thing you know, this mold called penicillium grows on it, and it absolutely obliterates the surrounding bacteria. Boom! A total happy accident in basic science completely paved the way for the applied science of using antibiotics to cure disease. Talk about a game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, Thinking Like a Scientist.
Now, to crack these biological mysteries, scientists rely on two main mental frameworks. The first is inductive reasoning. This is when you take a bunch of very specific observations and use them to build a broad, general conclusion. Like with brain scans, you watch a bunch of live brains light up in one highly specific area every time the subjects look at images of food. From all those specific data points, you induce the general conclusion, this part of the brain handles our response to food. Deductive reasoning is the exact opposite. You start with a big, general principle and use it to predict a highly specific result. So, if the general law is that climates are warming, scientists can deduce or predict exactly how specific plant and animal populations in a region will shift as a result. Both are absolutely crucial for getting to the truth.
And all this logic feeds directly into the ultimate problem-solving tool, the scientific method. Honestly, you probably use this every single day without even realizing it. Think about it. You make an observation. Your toaster won't toast your bread. That sparks a question. Why is it broken? So, you come up with a hypothesis. Maybe the electrical outlet is completely dead. Time for an experiment. You plug your coffee maker into that exact same outlet. If the coffee maker powers up and brews a pot, you've reached your conclusion. Your hypothesis was wrong. The outlet is totally fine, which means you've got to pivot and test a new hypothesis. Maybe the toaster itself has just given up the ghost. It's a beautifully logical, step-by-step process of elimination.
Which brings us to Section 3, what exactly is life?
Okay, let's tackle a question that always throws people for a loop. Are viruses actually alive? I mean, they attack us, they cause diseases, they honestly seem to act with some kind of sinister purpose. But here's the crazy part. Virologists, they aren't technically biologists in the strictest sense. Seriously? Because viruses aren't made of cells and they literally cannot reproduce on their own. They have to break in and hijack a host cell to do their dirty work. Because they're missing those core features, viruses actually fail the fundamental criteria for life. And hey, that's exactly why antibiotics won't do a thing for your viral cold. You can't kill something that was never technically alive in the first place.
So what exactly are the criteria then? Well, biologists have nailed down 8 absolute must-have properties that every single living entity shares. Ready? Here we go. Order and complex structure. Sensitivity, responding to stimuli. Reproduction. Adaptation to their specific environment. Growth and development, which is all coded by genes. Regulation and homeostasis. Energy processing. Got to fuel those metabolic activities somehow. And last but not least, evolution over time. Basically, if an entity doesn't check every single one of those 8 boxes, it doesn't get to join the Alive Club.
I actually want to zero in on one of those properties for a second, just because it's so incredibly vital: homeostasis. In plain English, this is just maintaining a stable internal environment no matter what kind of chaos is happening on the outside. Take a polar bear out on the freezing, ice-covered regions of the Arctic.
Despite the extreme external cold, that bear manages to keep a perfectly warm, stable internal body temperature thanks to its thick fur and dense layer of fat for insulation. That constant behind-the-scenes balancing act, that is homeostasis doing its job.
All right, shifting gears to Section 4, the blueprint of organization.
Let's walk through how life basically builds itself from the ground up. It's an incredibly structured hierarchy. At the absolute foundational level, the basic unit of matter is the atom. Atoms link up to form complex molecules and massive macromolecules, like your DNA. Those organize into a cell, which, as we know, is the fundamental unit of life itself. From there, cells collaborate to form tissues, and tissues build organs, like an animal's heart or the leaves on a plant. Zoom out even more, and individual organisms group together into a population. Think of, say, all the pine trees in one specific forest. Populations then build communities, communities build ecosystems, until finally you add all those ecosystems together and you get the biosphere. The sum total of all zones of life on Earth. It's just a wildly impressive blueprint.
And finally, Section 5, the tree of life.
So for the longest time, scientists classified life basically by just eyeballing it. What did the organism look like? Its physical morphology. But then in the 1970s, this American microbiologist named Carl Woese comes along and just flips biology on its head. He decided to redraw the entire map of life, but this time he used genetics instead of physical shapes. By comparing ribosomal RNA sequences, he figured out that this massive group of things we used to just call bacteria were actually two completely, totally distinct domains of life. He established a brand new three-domain system: bacteria, archaea, which are these wild microorganisms that often live in really extreme environments, and eukarya, which is the umbrella for everything else, from single-celled eukaryotes all the way up to plants, animals, and yep, us.
To actually visualize all these complex genetic relationships, biologists use what's called a phylogenetic tree. It's essentially a massive evolutionary family tree. The key things to understand here are the internal nodes, like the ones labeled A, B, C, and D. Every single one of those nodes represents a common ancestor. They mark the exact, specific moments in deep evolutionary history where one single ancestral species split and diverged into two distinct new species. By tracing the branches backward to those intersection points, we can figure out exactly how closely or distantly related different organisms are to one another.
Which brings us right to the edge of tomorrow. We've gone from looking at the physical shapes of organisms to sequencing their actual genes. But today, the sheer amount of genetic data we have is exploding. We are officially entering the era of in silico research. That means using massive, super powerful computer algorithms and colossal databases to analyze biology. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. As these massive, data-driven systems get smarter and faster, how exactly are they going to rewrite our tree of life tomorrow? Let me tell you, the mystery of life is nowhere near solved, and the investigation is getting more exciting by the minute. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep asking those big questions.